double-decker bridge, the most unusual in Australia. Spanning the Clarence River between Grafton and South Grafton, it's a vital link for transport between Sydney and Brisbane. Vehicles take the high road and the trains take the low road, but neither will be in Scotland before you. The bridge was originally designed only for the railway, but plans were altered before building began. That's why rail approaches are straight and the road curves in on giant concrete spans. In the control tower, lift span operator Arthur Edwards pulls the lever which opens the bridge to allow ships to pass. So delicate is the balance that the actual lift takes only 1 minute. From the moment traffic gates close, all movements are precision-timed and interlocked, so there's no possibility of accident. The bridge is 1,510 feet long, and steelwork and the concrete highway weigh 6,000 tons. Its efficiency is a tribute to planners who are not afraid to be unorthodox. A bridge unique in Australia, one of the few of its kind in the world.
Jacaranda time in Grafton, the city of colour on the north coast of New South Wales. And Jacaranda time means more than glorious blossom. It's time for gaiety, for singing and dancing. Here's a community spirit other cities could follow, a cooperative effort, as all Grafton joins the festival of the Jacaranda. No festival would be complete without its procession, and this procession wouldn't be complete without Bill Chataway, Jacaranda Bill, who founded the festival 15 years ago. So Grafton celebrates with dancing, tiny tots around the maypole. Men and women, boys and girls in the market square, folk dancing to celebrate a festival that's become famous. No one too old to dance, no one too young. Just as long as you're gay and carefree. Boy, corn on the hoof. They dance all morning and they dance all afternoon. What, more of them? Yes, Grafton sets a new high in festive merriment with a week that has its climax in the crowning of the Jacaranda Queen. This year, the lucky girl is Fay Schaefer, Queen for 1 whole year. At the showground, on an illuminated dais, she receives the coveted crown. And then, since the night's still young, Grafton goes right on dancing.
by Grafton's famous jacarandas, Christchurch Cathedral is the scene of a special service attended by the Archbishop of Sydney. More than 80 years after the laying of the foundation stone, Bishop Clements, 5th Bishop of Grafton, is to consecrate the cathedral. The huge crowd which overflows the service sees an impressive procession of bishops and clergy. Inside is a fragment of stone from the 800-year-old Norman Abbey of St. Augustine, Canterbury. But the cathedral is rich in Australian history too, for it was built under the supervision of the Reverend Charles Greenway, a son of the famous architect. An historic building consecrated at last.
Grafton, city of jacarandas, celebrates the 21st birthday of its Jacaranda Festival. And what a 21st birthday it is. The whole city dances as the festival celebrates its coming of age. Dancing in the parks and in the streets. The cars can wait because the traffic cops are probably dancing too. Happy Jack Martin's arrived from Brisbane. 75 but as hip as any. Australia needs more festivals like this one and more of the community pride and spirit that makes them possible. The Jacaranda has made Grafton famous in many lands, and our people come from far and wide to join in the celebrations. Everyone sings and dances, for Grafton's festival is 21 today.
Swollen by more than 30 inches of rain on its large catchment area, the Richmond River floods into Lismore, northern New South Wales. Fortunately, the rain eased just as the water was approaching record high levels. More than 100 families were cut off by floodwaters in areas upriver from Lismore, and one man lost his life. Farms on the rich river flat were inundated and crops lost. Cattle and horses were marooned. Many stock owners, however, anticipating that the river would go on a rampage, moved their beasts to safety. Some got away only just ahead of the floodwater. The water rose and swept over low-lying roads with alarming rapidity. In another 15 minutes of rising water, this road will be dangerous. The main business section of Lismore escaped damage, but houses near the river had foundations submerged. Rivers, stay away from our door. Lismore's damage, serious enough, might have been disastrous had the river risen another few feet. Grim havoc in the wake of the worst flood disaster in the history of the New South Wales North Coast. 23 people died. Hundreds of valuable cattle were drowned. Homes were swept bodily away. Millions of pounds worth of damage was done. Now these stricken people are struggling to start all over again. That takes courage. This house was swept half a mile across the town of Lismore. Overall lies the sickening stench of death. Cattle losses have been appalling and most of the carcasses were swept to sea. Foul mud and slime covers everything. Paddocks, roads, the interiors of houses, shops, churches, and ever present is the threat of disease. A span of the bridge at Casino was torn out by a wall of water 30 feet high. But already gangs are on the job making temporary repairs, but traffic must move. Loosened hay has been flown in and is distributed to starving cattle. Grafton cleans up. Damage here was fortunately far less serious than at Lismore, Casino and Coracai. The now dry Gollan Hotel Lismore, which 10 days before the flood sheltered the Queen and the Duke for a night. They still can find a smile. Shop girls washed out damaged goods that must be sold at sacrifice prices. Storekeepers lost tens of thousands of pounds worth of stock. Hams and meat polluted by the river must be disposed of. According to the mayor of Lismore, there is over £250,000 worth of food, new furniture and clothing, bags of grain and other goods dumped on this tip. Devastation in the wake of a flood. Only the people who lived through it can know its real horror. Lithgow may claim Marjorie Jackson as a hometown girl, but more than 5,000 people at Coffs Harbour turn out to show the world's record-breaking sprinter that they haven't forgotten that she was born right here. Marjorie gets a real welcome at her original home. She was born here 21 years ago on September the 13th. Of course, that farm was only a seed in those days. Incidentally, another Australian sporting star, Davis Cup player Mervyn Rose, was born in the same street. Bananas in wintertime, eh? But this is the tropical north. At the Anzac Park Cenotaph, Australia's most famous young woman accompanies the local president of the Returned Soldiers League to lay a wreath. Marjorie is accompanied to Coffs Harbour by her parents and sister Beryl, and they and local residents see the Olympic champion in a role usually reserved for those too old to run. Oh well, it's one way of keeping fit. Marge is a girl who gets around, fast. If she hadn't sprinted south to become the Lithgow Flash, she might have been the Coffs Comet. There's going to be some lion stories round Coffs Harbour for a long time. But two more and the elephant took off for the wide open spaces. Residents took off for cover. In daylight, one of the lions was quickly discovered, and the walls and fences of Coffs Harbour weren't high enough for most citizens. He wants to be a lion tamer when he grows up. That is, if he grows up. The lion killed 30 prize fowls, ate only part of one. The rest are suffering from nervous prostration, so is the owner. Police and army men who had been attending a ball were armed with .303 rifles and joined in the hunt. But what do you do with a lion when he just sits and stares? City Sound's on-the-spot cameraman, Jack Gerard, was grateful for the chance to make close-ups. We're worried about his insurance. They captured Rill the elephant, and she decided to go quietly. Fancy mislaying an elephant for 8 hours. Then they got after the really big game. The two lions were cornered on a beach, and circus men quickly erected a huge 50-foot cage. Most nervous people in the whole show were the circus men. They feared some trigger-happy hunter would bump off their valuable lions. Excitement runs high as the lions are herded towards the big cage. At this stage, residents of the more outlying districts were beginning to come down from the trees. Fortunately, the lions had been fed just before the accident and seemed to have no particular interest in rump steak, human and on the hoof. One in and one to go.